Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the flickering glow of fluorescent lights, server fans humming like cicadas, and the faint smell of optimism mixed with pizza grease. You're standing in a dusty garage in Menlo Park, California, and no, this isn't the start of a Netflix true crime doc. You're barefoot somehow because that's how these things begin, uncomfortably and underprepared. Two Stanford PhD students are kneeling next to beige-colored towers of Frankenstein computers, muttering about crawlers and backlinks like it's casual small talk. Their names? Larry Page and Sergey Brin. And they don't know it yet, but the thing they're soldering, debugging, and occasionally kicking is going to change the way the world finds literally everything. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, leave me a comment telling me what city you're listening from and what time it is right now. I love knowing where you're all drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squat next to the server rack, cables tangled like ramen noodles. It's 1998. The world's internet is more mess than map. Searching online feels like wandering a library where half the books lie about their titles and the other half are in Comic Sans. Yahoo is king, but its directory system is clunky, like trying to find a vegan recipe by browsing a phone book. That's where Larry and Sergey come in. They're not trying to build a business yet, they're trying to solve a math problem. Something elegant, something scalable, something that feels like truth. So they invent PageRank. You watch them scribble ideas across whiteboards scavenged from Stanford hallways. The logic? The more important a page is, the more other pages will link to it. You nod, sipping stale Mountain Dew. It's like academic gossip. If everyone's quoting the same research paper, maybe that paper actually says something useful. But to make it work, they need power. Literally. They plug together servers in an almost illegal setup. You run to Fry's Electronics so often the cashier starts calling you cable guy. The garage's breaker trips so frequently you start keeping flashlights taped to your wrists. But the index grows. By September, their search engine indexes 60 million pages. It's faster, cleaner, and spookily good. So good, in fact, that people start telling each other, don't use that clunky thing, try this new one. Google it. Only problem? They're broke. Broke enough that when someone leaves an unopened bag of Cheetos at the student union, it becomes breakfast. Then, one fateful morning, you all gather in the driveway. Andy Bechtelsheim, co-founder of Sun Microsystems, has stopped by. He's heard a pitch for all of 3 minutes, nods once, pulls out his checkbook, and writes, to Google Inc., $100,000. There's only one problem. Google Inc. doesn't exist yet. Cue panic laughter sweat combo. You, Larry, and Sergey incorporate fast. Real fast. And just like that, the startup isn't just a PhD side project anymore. It has capital, it has momentum, and it still has that clunky old garage smell. Later, people will romanticize this part. Oh, they started in a garage. But you? You remember the bugs, the fire ants under the Ethernet cable, the day the subwoofer blew out because someone tried to use it as a cooling fan. The eerie silence when the servers all shut down at once and nobody breathed until the lights blinked back on. It wasn't poetic, it was sweaty, desperate, unreasonable, and absolutely magical. Business historians will say this was the moment innovation cracked open, that the tech industry's future came not from polished boardrooms, but garages where engineers forgot to eat dinner and made up the rules as they went. There's still debate today. Some business school professors argue Google's early success was just lucky timing in a chaotic ecosystem. Others say it was the strength of PageRank, the elegance of the model, the obsessive focus on relevance. Either way, you were there. And by the time the neighbors start calling in noise complaints, that little search engine, it's already learning the world. The sun hasn't really come up yet. This is Palo Alto, after all, and the fog acts like it owns the place. You're sitting on the back step of the garage, inhaling the sweet scent of asphalt and burnt coffee. Larry's inside muttering something about link trees. Sergey's throwing tennis balls against the wall like he's debugging with kinetic energy. You're all wired on caffeine and low-grade triumph. But just as Google starts crawling more pages, you start noticing something weird. People aren't just using it, they're obsessed. You run into a friend from a neighboring startup who says, "Oh yeah, I Google everything now." Wait, Google? Not use Google, but Google? You write it off as a fluke. Then your cousin says it. Then your dentist. The product name is morphing into a verb. A linguistic Pokemon evolution. You don't have time to celebrate though, because outside the garage, the search engine wars are fully underway. You remember them like a fever dream. Ask Jeeves, the polite British butler who never actually knew anything. Alta Vista, the OG, powerful but clunky. Lycos, which always sounded like a toothpaste brand. Yahoo is still king. Sort of. Their homepage is the internet's messy living room, weather, horoscopes, chat rooms, weird banner ads offering free Tibetan love spells. They've got money and they're loud. Google, meanwhile, all white space, clean, efficient. You spend hours trying to convince early users that the minimalism isn't a bug, it's design. There's nothing on the homepage, people say. Exactly, you answer, pointing at the logo like it's fine art. There's one field, one button, one mission. You don't organize the internet, you make it searchable. And faster than anyone expected, people start choosing you. The numbers go from hundreds of searches a day to thousands, then tens of thousands. You remember the day you crossed 1 million. No one spoke for a second. Sergey stared at the graph. Larry blinked like it might vanish. Then someone grabbed a Sharpie and wrote, "Holy S," on the whiteboard. You censored it for the investor deck later. But with success comes pressure. You're still running things on Linux boxes built from literal spare parts. You once overheard an engineer say, "If one more power strip dies, we lose Brazil." Not great. So you move out of the garage into a real office with actual desks and chairs that don't squeak. You bring the lava lamps, of course. But here's the thing you realize. The web's growing faster than anyone can track. Pages double, then triple, then multiply like rabbits. The challenge isn't just about finding information anymore. It's about ranking it, sorting it, making it useful in under 0.3 seconds. You build data centers that buzz like hives. You start testing algorithms with names like Florida, Jagger, and Bourbon. Yes, those are real names. And yes, the internet forums explode every time one goes live. SEO experts yell into the void. Website owners cry. Google changed the algorithm again. You shrug. Search relevance is a moving target. Some business historians say this period, 1999 to 2001, was Google's critical edge. The others were treating search like a content portal. You treated it like a problem to be solved, and users noticed. Even as .coms were collapsing all around, Google kept growing. Steady, quiet, focused. Of course, not everything was perfect. You once accidentally deleted 4% of the index in one night because someone tested a new crawler without a safety flag. Oops. And there was that awkward press interview where someone asked how you made money and you said, we're working on that. Admittedly, kind of important. But the product, it just worked. And as people ran from sinking startups, many ran toward Google. You start collecting talent like rare Pokemon. Engineers who could have worked anywhere walk in saying, "I want to build the future of search." Some bring dogs, one brings a trombone. No one wears suits. It's chaos. Beautiful, caffeinated chaos. And you're right in the middle of it. Learning, building, breaking, fixing, and quietly, the idea of search changes in everyone's mind. It stops being a feature. It becomes a verb, a ritual, a way to start every question, every curiosity, every journey. And even now, some linguists and tech historians still argue about it. Did Google invent the verb to Google? Or did the internet do it organically? There's no clear answer. But you do know one thing. It happened right here. In the fluorescent lit chaos of early Google. And you were part of it. Your fingers are stained with dry erase ink and whatever's left of a blueberry muffin. It's late, again. But the garage days are behind you. Now, you're in an actual office with keycards, a snack wall, and chairs that don't collapse under human weight. Still, startup habits die hard. You're halfway through debugging a weird indexing hiccup when someone shouts across the open plan space, "Hey, you guys want to come out to the driveway for a sec?" And that's how you meet Andy Bechtelsheim again, only this time not holding a check. Nope, he's here for the demo, but not your demo. There's another visitor today, a man in khakis and quiet confidence. You don't know it yet, but this is the day. The day Google's future meets its first real money. This isn't garage chic seed funding anymore. This is venture capital. Real industrial strength rocket fuel. And what gets that check signed? A 3-minute demo of a little something called PageRank. You know the math behind it, like your own heartbeat now. Pages are important not because they shout the loudest, but because other important pages point to them. Reputation by association, a trust game, kind of like high school but with algorithms and no gym class. Bechtelsheim watches the demo silently, arms crossed. Then he just writes the check. $100,000. On the spot. The room goes silent. Larry stares at it. Sergey says, "Did he just..." You're trying to decide if you're supposed to clap or hide it in a safe. There is no safe. There isn't even a filing cabinet yet. Someone stashes the check in a kitchen drawer next to some paper towels and a stale protein bar. And suddenly you're incorporated. Well, eventually. It takes a few weeks to get the paperwork right. But that check starts everything. It's the spark. And once the money hits, things move fast. You're still a tiny team, but you're not invisible anymore. Investors are sniffing around. Recruiters are calling. The web keeps growing. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. Google still doesn't have a business model. You're gaining users by the boatload, but no one's paying you a dime. You remember a meeting where someone floated the idea of ads. The word landed like a stink bomb. "No pop-ups," someone said. "No banner ads," said another. "Absolutely no auto-playing videos," said literally everyone. So you start tinkering. What if the ads weren't annoying? What if they were useful? What if they matched exactly what people were looking for? Welcome to the seed of what becomes AdWords. You don't know it yet, but this will eventually become Google's cash cannon. At first, it's simple, text only, tiny, relevant. You sit in a room with a whiteboard and someone scribbles. Ads should never be louder than the answers. It becomes an unofficial motto. The engineering team builds it like another search feature, not a billboard. You watch as small businesses, bakeries, mechanics, weird little lamp stores start bidding on keywords. They're paying for relevance, and it works. The clicks turn into customers. Revenue starts trickling in, then flooding, then exploding. And one day you see the number. Google has become profitable. It's like finding gold in the back of the junk drawer. You remember the day you told your parents Google might actually make money. Your mom said, "From the internet? Like, from emails?" You just nodded and said something like that. But not everyone is clapping. In a marketing class somewhere, a professor writes sponsored search on the board and asks, "Is this the future of advertising or a dangerous erosion of user trust?" The class splits in half. To this day, they're still debating. Some say AdWords revolutionized access. Others say it blurred the line between content and commerce. You? You just remember how excited that one lamp store owner was when his ad brought in 10 new customers in a single day. He sent a thank you email with way too many exclamation points. You printed it out and stuck it on the office fridge. That fridge would later become sacred. A shrine to early Google wins, press clippings, bug fix memes, a photo of someone sleeping under a desk in a hoodie. You smile at the memory. The company's still small, but it's real now, profitable, scalable. Search isn't just a product anymore, it's a platform. It's the portal to the internet. And quietly, your little demo, your 3-minute garage pitch, has become the most valuable door in the digital world. The day you hear Google and IPO in the same sentence, you almost drop your burrito. You're still used to meetings where nobody wears shoes, and the agenda is fix the thing that broke. Now suddenly, you're prepping for Wall Street. You sit in a beanbag chair staring at an email with the subject line, "Going public?" Your coffee goes cold. Not because you forget it, because you freeze. Going public means scrutiny. Investors, quarterly earnings, suits, and for the first time, Google has to explain itself to the world. Not just the what of the search bar, but the how, the why, the where is all this data going, and most importantly, how are you going to make us money? The phrase initial public offering echoes down every hallway like a haunted whisper. And the plan? It's weird. Very, very Google. Instead of cozying up to big banks and letting them handpick investors, the team goes with a Dutch auction. An egalitarian, semi-chaotic, definitely controversial choice that basically tells Wall Street, we'll let the market decide. You remember sitting in a room where someone said, "We're not just doing a public offering, we're offering a public offering." You weren't sure if it was deep or just confusing, but it stuck. Of course, not everything goes smoothly. The IPO filing includes the "Don't be evil" motto. A bold choice, sure, but suddenly it's not just a motto on the kitchen whiteboard. It's a legal and public document. Now journalists start asking, can a company that sells ads on search results still not be evil? The press loves that question. Analysts chew on it like a stress toy. And honestly, inside the company, people argue about it too. You remember one all-hands meeting where an engineer asked, "Is optimizing ad revenue evil if it funds free information access?" Nobody had a clean answer. Even now, business schools argue about it. Some say it's proof of corporate idealism. Others say it was marketing wrapped in moral language. You? You remember the awkward silence in that room right after the question. Anyway, IPO day finally arrives. August 19th, 2004. You show up early, clutching a lumpy backpack and a lukewarm protein shake. Everyone's in branded t-shirts instead of suits, except the one guy who wore a tuxedo ironically and immediately regretted it. The opening bid is set. $85 a share. You all gather around a laptop live streaming CNBC, watching the tiny stock ticker bounce. And then, boom, Goog is live. The graph does a little hop, then a cautious skip, then a respectable sprint. Not a tech bubble rocket, but a steady climb. The kind you can build a company on. At the end of the day, Google's market cap is over $27 billion. Your brain struggles to hold that number. You remember when your servers were held together by zip ties and hope. Now you're part of a public company with shareholders and board meetings and, weirdly, people on Reddit guessing how many beanbags the execs sit on. Fun fact, one analyst called the IPO a nerd coronation. Another said, Google just made being weird look profitable. You kind of love that. Still, you walk past the server racks that night and nothing feels different. The lights blink, the fans hum. The code still crawls pages like an insomniac librarian. But something has changed. There's money now, lots of it. And money brings pressure, responsibility, scaling, new hires, HR manuals, expense reports that actually matter. You overhear someone mutter, "We're not a startup anymore." And that's true. But it's not entirely a loss. Because even as the company grows, the weirdness stays. Somewhere, someone's still using an inflatable dinosaur as a desk divider. The TGIF meetings still involve jokes, music, and occasionally someone doing a backflip. You keep the lava lamps, the old garage servers, and most importantly, the core idea. Make the world's information universally accessible and useful. It's easy to forget, amid the headlines and analyst reports, that the mission hasn't changed. It just has a lot more eyeballs now. You lean back in your chair, stretch, and realize your stock options are worth more than your childhood home. Wild. But tomorrow, you'll still wake up, drink your burnt office coffee, and ask the same question you did back in the garage. What's next? You wake up one day to the sound of muffled audio from the next cube. It's a guy on a skateboard. In a zoo? You peek over the divider. Your coworker shrugs and says, "I'm watching this thing called YouTube." You lean in closer. The video's pixelated, shaky, and honestly, not that impressive. But something about it feels different. You ask, "Why are you watching it?" He says, "I don't know, I just kept clicking." And that's when it hits you. Search is evolving. People don't just want to read the web anymore, they want to watch it, they want to hear it, feel it, let it autoplay while they make dinner. YouTube isn't just a hobbyist's dump pile anymore. It's becoming a digital campfire. So naturally, someone raises their hand in a product meeting and says, "Should we buy it?" You all laugh nervously because, well, it's not exactly cheap. Also, the whole legal side is, how do we say this? Spicy. People are uploading copyrighted TV clips like they're dropping mixtapes. Studios are furious. The lawyers are sharpening their pencils. Still, the idea takes root. Video is the future. And if Google's mission is to organize the world's information, well, video is information too. Just moving and louder. Eventually, the boardroom conversation turns serious. Someone shows a chart. YouTube traffic is exploding. Another person shows a slide with a big dollar sign. And then, like so many things at Google, the decision gets made quickly, almost quietly. In October 2006, you closed the deal. $1.65 billion. In stock. It's the company's biggest acquisition ever at that point. YouTube's founders walk away stunned, wealthy, and still wearing hoodies. You hear someone in the break room say, "Feels like we just bought the future," and 1,000 takedown notices. They're not wrong. For months, it's a legal circus, but something else happens too. People keep watching. They post vlogs, unboxings, cat fails, blender experiments. You remember one that was just a guy whispering into a mic about his toaster? Oddly relaxing. Now it's a genre. ASMR. You're welcome. Some business historians say the YouTube acquisition was either reckless or genius. Depends who you ask. Plenty of analysts thought Google had overpaid. A few predicted it would sink under copyright lawsuits, but here's what they missed. Attention is currency, and YouTube had it. Lots of it. Every day, more and more people typed YouTube into the Google search bar instead of full URLs. And if users go where the videos are, Google better own the video library. Now, inside the company, you're trying to solve two puzzles at once. Keep YouTube legal, make it profitable. The early solution? Ads, of course, but gently. Not the invasive, scream-in-your-face stuff. Just quiet little pre-rolls. The kind people only hate a little. You remember the first time someone said, YouTube will be the new television? It sounded ridiculous. Then came Gangnam Style. Then came makeup tutorials with 4 million views. Then came a 10-hour loop of a duck dancing to Cotton Eye Joe. And one day you wake up and realize, yeah, maybe it is the new television. Just less polished. More human. Back in the main office, the team working on search is now dealing with new kinds of queries. How to tie a tie. Puppy sneezing compilation. DIY bookshelf ideas. Suddenly, users don't just want links. They want answers they can see, hear, and follow along with. And YouTube delivers. Even teachers start using it in classrooms. Okay, sometimes during recess, but it counts. Meanwhile, your infrastructure team is sweating. Video files are huge. CDNs are stretched. Servers are hungry. You have to build new data centers just to keep the buffering wheel from becoming a meme. And don't even talk to your legal team until they've had coffee. Still, the system holds, the lawsuits settle, and the videos keep coming. One day, you pass a wall in the office covered in screenshots. Each one is a viral moment. A kid with a lightsaber, a panda sneezing, a soldier reuniting with their dog. You realize this isn't just entertainment, it's memory. People are archiving their lives in motion, and somehow it's now part of Google's mission to store and serve those moments. No one saw this coming in the garage days, but that's the thing about organizing the world's information. Sometimes it sings, sometimes it dances, and sometimes it's just a duck in a funny hat. You're sitting in a windowless conference room, sipping from a paper cup labeled Cold Brew Experiment Number 12, when the slide goes up. Android acquisition, confidential. You blink. Is this a phone thing? You nudge the engineer next to you, whisper, "Didn't we just buy a company that makes mobile ringtones?" He shrugs. Nobody knows much. Just that the guy leading the team, Andy Rubin, has a mysterious product, a few prototypes, and a folder labeled Open Source Operating System. You lean forward. Something in the room shifts. It's not excitement exactly, more like the quiet before a big domino falls. Because here's the deal. It's 2005, and mobile phones are a mess. Each one speaks a different software language. Carriers control what you can install, what buttons do what, and sometimes even what apps you're allowed to run. Imagine the internet. But if you could only visit 5 websites, and one of them was your cousin's weird cricket scores blog. Not ideal. And Google, you're still desktop first. But something in your gut says, the future is pocket-sized. Still, no one outside this room even knows yet. The acquisition happens under the radar. Tiny team. Tiny check. Barely reported in the news. But inside, the ripples start immediately. You walk into the engineering bay and see someone holding what looks like a BlackBerry duct taped to a graphing calculator. That's the prototype. The plan? Build a phone OS that's open, flexible, search-powered. One engineer writes on the whiteboard in giant letters, "Our phone doesn't come with rules, just code." You're skeptical. Carriers hate that. But Andy Rubin says, "Trust me, the web will win." You don't fully get it yet. Then Steve Jobs announces the iPhone, and everything snaps into focus. In one keynote, the entire mobile industry gets drop-kicked into the future. Multi-touch. Browsers that don't make you want to cry. A screen that goes edge to edge like magic. You gather with your team to watch the live stream, half in awe, half in panic. The realization hits. This is no longer an experiment. You're in a war now. So, the Android team huddles. They scrap their BlackBerry-style prototype, start from scratch, full touchscreen. The pace becomes intense. You're working weekends, debugging in parking lots, testing UI responsiveness while holding 2 phones and a sandwich. Google isn't a hardware company, but now it has to look like one. You partner with HTC to launch the first real device, the G1. It's not pretty, it has a trackball, and it kind of creaks when you slide the screen open, but it works. It has Google Search built in, Google Maps that doesn't suck, a browser that sort of behaves, and most importantly, it can run any app from any developer. Freedom. A few months later, someone in the dev team sets up a little counter on the wall. Apps in Android market, 27. You laugh. Then 6 months later, it says 142, then 10 ton in Santasandan. Then the counter breaks. Developers start flooding in because Google isn't charging them, isn't telling them how their app should behave, isn't taking a 30% cut yet. You remember a team lunch where someone said, "We're not fighting Apple, we're building the other half of the internet." Because here's the wild thing, 2 visions start to form. Apple, beautiful, curated, premium. Google, open, chaotic, democratic. The world chooses both. Some business professors still argue, was Android a defensive play to protect mobile search or a visionary platform move? You shrug, maybe both. But you do remember one thing very clearly. When Android launched, Google was still mostly known for search. 2 years later, people start asking, wait, Google makes my phone too? The G1 turns into the Nexus. The Nexus becomes Pixel. And suddenly, you're not just answering the world's questions, you're in their pockets, guiding them from point A to B, waking them up in the morning, capturing their vacations, listening to them say, "Hey Google, what's the capital of Iceland?" You think back to that quiet conference room where this all started. Someone once said, "Phones are personal, and now yours is part of millions of lives." Even if sometimes it autocorrects good night to good fight. It starts with a whisper, a breeze that rattles the blinds in a sealed-off warehouse. You step into a building so cold, your glasses fog up the moment they hit the inside air. This isn't the office anymore. You're in a data center, but not just any data center. A Google one. The hum hits you first. It's like standing inside a sleeping spaceship. Racks stretch into the dark like metallic redwoods. LEDs blink and sync, casting a pulse that feels almost alive. You walk past servers with names like Neutron and Hercules. Someone even labeled one Jeff just to keep things humble. The floor is raised, the air is dry. The temperature is so precise it could babysit ice cream. And behind it all, tucked in those glowing boxes, is the cloud. Well, the early version of it. Before cloud computing became a LinkedIn buzzword and everyone tried to rebrand their servers as Mist. Back then, it was just a simple idea. What if people didn't need to own machines to do big things with data? You remember someone in ops once saying, "We're not just storing websites anymore, we're storing the internet's brain." It sounded dramatic, but it wasn't wrong. Here's what most folks missed about Google in those days. Everyone thought the product was the search bar, but you saw what was underneath. The infrastructure, the raw compute, the planet-scale architecture that kept it all spinning while billions of users typed how to boil an egg at 2 a.m. And slowly, that backend starts stepping into the spotlight. Developers want access, startups want scale. Enterprises want answers. So a small team puts together something called App Engine. It lets developers run code on Google's cloud without needing to manage the servers. They deploy apps in minutes. They scale in seconds. They break things faster, which was kind of the point. You sit in a room watching the first customer live demo their app on App Engine. When it works, the applause is genuine, the relief palpable, and that's just the beginning. Soon there's Google Cloud Storage, then BigQuery, then Kubernetes, yes, the thing that sounds like a Greek seafood restaurant but actually runs half the internet now. Engineers go from launching scripts on their laptops to deploying planetary scale microservices without leaving their beanbag. And the coolest part? This whole revolution is happening quietly. Amazon's in the cloud race too, and fast. Microsoft's catching up. But Google's got infrastructure built by necessity. The search engine had to be fast. Maps had to be real time. Gmail couldn't crash, not unless you wanted chaos in 7 languages. So, the systems built for those products, they were perfect for cloud. Some VCs start calling it Google's secret weapon. Others say Google waited too long to turn it into a business. The debate still circles. In MBA classes, the question is framed like this: was Google Cloud an inevitable giant or a delayed moonshot? You remember the truth. It started with a group of engineers who just didn't want their own servers to crash. Now, Fortune 500 companies are using those same tools to do things like model climate change and simulate protein folding. One day, you're walking past a meeting room where someone's pitching cloud as a utility. The phrase feels weirdly intimate, like you're selling oxygen, but maybe that's the point. The internet isn't just content anymore. It's function, it's memory, it's muscle. And the cloud, it's the silent backbone holding all of it up. That night, as you're heading out, it starts to rain. The kind of cold, even rain that makes you wonder if the weather is debugging itself. You pause, look back through the glass at the rows of servers glowing like coals in the dark. They're not beautiful in the classic sense, but they're steady, endless, faithful, just like a good search result, just like home for your data. You arrive in Beijing with a suitcase, a translator app, and a healthy dose of optimism. You're here on a mission that sounds straightforward when typed in an email. Explore Google's expansion in China. But as you step into the taxi line outside the airport, reality starts whispering, this isn't Menlo Park. This is a different game. And the rules, they're negotiable. Back in the US, the philosophy is clear. Organize the world's information. But here, the world's information is behind a filter, a firewall. A long, quiet list of off-limits. You sit in early meetings where the word censorship gets carefully replaced with compliance. You nod along, but your stomach knots. Because if search is about truth and the truth is trimmed, is it still Google? That's the tension. That's the storm no one's figured out how to surf. But the opportunity is enormous. 1 billion users, a booming tech scene, a culture that's already online, mobile first, message based, moving fast. You remember standing outside an internet cafe at 2 a.m. in Shanghai? It's packed. College kids are playing StarCraft, ordering noodles, searching for homework help. They want the internet. They need it. So the company launches Google.cn in 2006. It's a censored version, filtered, modified, flagged, results removed before you even realize they were there. You sit in a product review meeting where someone says, if we don't do this, someone else will, and do it worse. Others argue, by being present, maybe we can gradually open the system from the inside. You feel the room divide. It's not a fist fight, it's a philosophical migraine, but the site launches anyway. And weirdly, for a while, it works. You gain users. You build local maps. You partner with local engineers, brilliant minds who navigate policy and product like tightrope walkers. There are good days. You attend a student Q&A at Tsinghua University. A young woman stands up and says, I learned more in 2 hours on Google than in 2 weeks of class. You smile, but inside something still twists, because you know what's missing from her results. You know what she didn't get to learn. Then 2010 hits. You get a late night call. Security breach. Massive. Targeted. Coming from inside the Great Firewall. Not just any attack, an attempt to access Gmail accounts of human rights activists. You remember the silence in the war room. No one says it, but everyone knows. This is the line. In January, the company announces it will stop censoring results. And if that means pulling out of mainland China entirely, so be it. You stare at the company blog post as it goes live. The title, A New Approach to China. The backlash is immediate. Some hail it as brave. Others say it's naive. Boardrooms buzz. Journalists write think pieces for weeks. Business schools still argue over it. Was it ethical leadership or commercial retreat? You? You remember watching the engineers in Beijing pack up their desks. Not with drama, with quiet efficiency. One of them sticks a post-it to his monitor. Some searches are worth standing for. You never forget that. Google's search results get redirected through Hong Kong, and you leave behind a bittersweet legacy, what some called a failed experiment, others a moral high ground. Even now, years later, the debate hasn't stopped. Was it right to enter in the first place? Should you have stayed? Should you have never left? You don't have all the answers, but you know this. Search only matters if it includes the whole truth. And in that moment, Google decided that partial truth wasn't enough. You close your laptop and walk into the Beijing night. The city glows. The air is heavy. The questions linger. But the sky, though dimmed, still holds stars. You're sitting at your desk, fidgeting with a branded stress ball shaped like a light bulb, when the email lands in your inbox. Subject: something alphabetical. You assume it's a typo or a new internal naming tool for apps. Or maybe someone finally lost a bet and is rebranding Chrome to Crispy. But then you open it and you read it. And somewhere around paragraph 3, your brain goes, wait, did we just break up with ourselves? Because it's official. Google is now part of Alphabet. The company just parent-trapped itself. Larry and Sergey are moving upstairs. Sundar Pichai is stepping into the Google CEO seat. And the rest of you, you're still Googlers. Just now with more cousins, like Capital G and Calico and Verily, and a mysterious one called simply X. You remember a joke someone scribbled on a whiteboard that week? Alphabet, the best way to search for boundaries. You chuckle, because let's be honest, Google was never just Google by then. It was email, it was phones, it was thermostats, it was self-driving cars, AI labs, fiber networks, glucose sensing contact lenses, and, inexplicably, a team working on making the internet float with balloons. It had gotten weird, in a good way, but also kind of messy. The decision to turn Google into a subsidiary made sense in that classic, wait 2 weeks and you'll see the logic kind of way. Alphabet becomes the umbrella, a place where moonshots don't freak out advertisers, where hardware experiments don't get judged by Gmail's uptime, where an AI team working on brain simulations doesn't have to check in with the Maps team every quarter. You remember the internal town hall. Larry gets on the mic, casual as ever, and says something like, "Companies get slow as they grow. We wanted to stay fast." You look around the room. No one knows what to expect. Some people are excited, others are nervous. A few start quietly Googling, what exactly is a holding company? The logo changes. The org chart does backflips. And suddenly you're answering emails that end in @abc.xyz. Someone jokes that the domain looks like a toddler's password. You laugh harder than you should. Alphabet becomes this strange new frontier, a corporate constellation. Google keeps doing what it does best: search, ads, Android, YouTube, maps. But the other teams? They get space, real space, autonomy, freedom. Occasionally too much freedom, but hey, that's what learning looks like. Starts throwing darts at the moon. Waymo emerges from the lab as a self-driving car company. Verily digs into life sciences. Calico decides it's going to try and solve aging. You overhear one engineer whisper, "We're one coffee away from turning into a Bond villain organization." It's said with love, mostly. What the world sees is a clean split. What you feel is a strange kind of growing up. Alphabet is the older sibling who keeps the lights on. Google is the teenager still climbing trees. And X? X is the kid with a paperclip, a battery, and a look in their eye that says, "Don't ask questions." Some business pundits say Alphabet was a genius move to isolate risk. Others say it was a confusing rebrand nobody outside of Mountain View ever fully cared about. You? You remember how it felt to work on a product and not have to justify it through the lens of web search? That freedom, it unlocked a lot. Ideas that had been sitting in people's notebooks suddenly had a home. You get emails with subject lines like drone delivery update and loon altitude troubleshooting, and not once do they feel like jokes. Alphabet isn't just a structure, it's a philosophy. Let the crazy live next door to the practical, because sometimes the world needs maps, and sometimes it needs a helium-powered Wi-Fi blimp. You're wearing safety goggles, standing in a massive white room filled with half-built drones, lab coats, and one lonely ping pong table. This isn't Google anymore. This is X, the moonshot factory, the skunk works, the part of Alphabet where logic goes to take a nap, and ambition wakes up with bedhead and says, "Let's try something ridiculous." They used to call it Google X, but even the Google part eventually got dropped. Because this place, it's its own thing. You walk past a row of test tubes labeled optical glucose and a dry erase board where someone's drawn a llama in a jetpack. No context, no apology. Welcome. This is where failure is required, expected, celebrated. Someone hands you a laminated sign that says, "If it works the first time, you aimed too low." You laugh nervously and pin it to your desk. Over the next few weeks, you hear about projects that sound like science fiction written by caffeinated engineers. Self-driving cars, internet balloons, contact lenses that measure blood sugar, wind turbines in the sky, smart glasses that whisper information into your ears, and every time you say, "Wait, seriously?" someone replies, "No, like, we already built the prototype." Here's how X operates. Big problem? Check. Radical solution? Even better. Breakthrough technology? Essential. You don't just chase ideas, you interrogate them. Push them until they fall apart. Because at X, killing your project early is a badge of honor. You walk into a meeting called a pre-mortem, where a team explains all the ways their drone delivery concept might fail. Someone brings cupcakes. It's weird, and strangely wholesome. The most famous X project is probably Waymo, the self-driving car initiative. You remember the first time you saw it drive itself through a campus parking lot? The car moved slowly, cautiously, like a toddler learning to walk, if that toddler had LiDAR. People gathered, phones out, whispering, "There's no one in the driver's seat." You couldn't help but smile. This wasn't the future you saw in 80s sci-fi movies. It was nerdier, quieter, more possible. Of course, not everything in X-Land works. Some projects crash, some burn, some just kind of evaporate. There was a robotic barista once. a space elevator concept. One guy pitched solving urban congestion by building underground vacuum tubes. They built a tiny one. It imploded. Still, no one got fired. Because at X, the culture is built on learning by leaping. And if you fall, you dust off. You take notes. You leap again. Critics outside say Alphabet wastes money here. They call X a moonshot vanity project, a science fair with $1 billion budget. But others, venture capitalists, researchers, even rival companies, say the opposite. That this model, wild as it is, might be the only way to truly invent the future. You overhear someone from the original self-driving team say, if we were at a traditional company, we'd still be pitching. Here we already shipped our third prototype. And here's what no one really talks about. Some of the moonshots fail. But the tech, it doesn't vanish. Pieces of those failures find their way into maps, into Android, into cloud, into products used by billions of people. The glasses didn't quite work out, but the voice commands did. The Wi-Fi balloons weren't a commercial success, but they helped shape connectivity tech in disaster zones. One engineer called it moonshot composting. Not elegant, but accurate. One day, you're helping prep a demo for an internal showcase. The team's presenting a new approach to food logistics using AI-powered drone swarms. You look up from your laptop and realize, nobody else is building this. At least, not with this much freedom. Not with this much joy. And maybe that's the point. Google answers questions. X dares to ask the ones that don't even make sense yet. You glance over at the whiteboard where someone wrote in dry marker, "Shoot for the moon." Worst case, you land near Nevada. It's smudged. But somehow that makes it more real. You're standing in a conference room with too many screens, and one of them just beat a world champion at a game people said computers could never truly understand. You blink, you rewind the footage. You watch the move again, Move 37, Game 2, Seoul 2016. Even the commentators paused mid-sentence. Wait, what? The AI didn't just play Go, it played like it had read poetry about Go in its sleep. AlphaGo had arrived, and just like that, Google's quiet little AI acquisition, DeepMind, was now a headline. You think back to when DeepMind first joined the Alphabet family. They were the ones training algorithms to beat Atari games, learning how to play Breakout by failing 10,000 times an hour. It was adorable. Then it got scary good. And now it just outmaneuvered Lee Sedol, one of the greatest Go players alive. You remember the press calling it an historic milestone in artificial intelligence. You remember Slack blowing up. Did you see that move? Was it intuition? Did it bluff? Suddenly, Go boards were appearing in office lounges. Someone made an internal leaderboard. You were 8th out of 11. Respectable. But the big shift wasn't the game. It was what it meant. That AI could learn pattern, nuance, context, not just brute force its way through tasks. The world took notice, and so did Google, because DeepMind wasn't just playing games. They were training neural networks that could predict protein folding, optimizing energy usage in data centers, working with the NHS in the UK to build early warning systems for disease. All powered by deep learning. Buzzword? Sure. Breakthrough? Also yes. In internal meetings, you start hearing new terms. Transformers. Reinforcement learning. Transfer learning. One engineer jokes, our models now learn like toddlers, curious, messy, and occasionally weirdly obsessed with ducks. Fair enough. Of course, AI isn't without drama. There are debates about bias in training data, about fairness, about interpretability. You remember a lunchtime debate about whether AI can ever truly be accountable. One person said, if a machine makes a decision we don't understand, is it really a decision? That sentence hung in the air like static. Some say Google was moving too fast, others say not fast enough. Ethics teams were formed, papers were published, transparency reports began to appear. But one thing was certain: AI was no longer a side project, it was center stage. Search got smarter. Photos started recognizing faces. Gmail finished your sentences. Literally, you still get creeped out when it suggests, "Sounds good, see you then," before you've even decided to go. And behind all of it, somewhere deep in the stack, were neural networks doing the heavy lifting. You start hearing whispers of a project called Gemini. Not just a chatbot, a multimodal megascale model that can read, write, translate, caption, and probably write your best man speech better than you. It's not just text in, text out anymore. It's images, it's video, it's audio, it's code, all woven together like a tapestry stitched by caffeinated alien spiders. At one internal demo, you watch Gemini generate a short film outline based on a painting and a piece of music. Then someone asks it to write a haiku. It does. It's good. Maybe too good. Someone asks, are we sure it's not sentient? Everyone laughs, uncomfortably. You jot a note in your margin. Remember to ask, how do we teach models humor without turning them into dads? AI has now become the platform shift. Search is being reimagined. The assistant is getting smarter. Ads are being optimized in ways you don't even fully understand anymore. It's thrilling. It's terrifying. It's inevitable. And even now, researchers still debate, is general intelligence close? Or are we just getting better at faking it? You sip your coffee and look at the old photo on your desk. 2 guys in a garage, a whiteboard, and a dream. They didn't plan for this, but maybe they made it possible, and now you're not just organizing the world's information, you're teaching machines how to understand it. You're standing on a sun-bleached curb in Chandler, Arizona, watching a car pull up to the intersection with no one behind the wheel, no driver, no hands, just silence and sensors. It feels like a magic trick, but this isn't Vegas, this is Waymo. Born out of X, raised under Alphabet, and now, somehow, a real company with real cars driving on real roads. You remember when it was called the Google Self-Driving Car Project? Back then, it was a Prius with a LiDAR dome the size of a small lawn chair duct-taped to the roof. Now, it's a sleek little minivan named the Chrysler Pacifica, retrofitted with more tech than a spaceship. You hear the engineer next to you murmur, it can see 360 degrees and react faster than any human. You believe it. You've seen the footage, cars dodging rogue shopping carts, navigating construction zones, stopping for ducks. Sometimes the ducks are imaginary. That's part of the challenge. Teaching a machine when to yield and when to ignore the leaf blowing across the road like it's trying to reenact Forrest Gump. You remember the early days? The team would ride around Mountain View with a laptop in the passenger seat, watching code execute in real time. Every time the car made a decision, a tiny voice inside your head would go, "Please be right." Sometimes it was. Sometimes less so. One prototype once braked hard for a stop sign a human had knocked over and laid flat on the sidewalk. It just sat there, waiting. Nobody told it, "That sign's tired, buddy. Let it nap." That's the thing. Driving is surprisingly human. It's gestures, it's eye contact at 4-way stops. It's rolling forward half an inch to say, "You go." Training AI to drive isn't just about rules, it's about etiquette. One researcher calls it negotiating in metal. And Waymo, it learns every mile, every mistake, every awkward left turn. They log billions of miles, virtual ones too, simulations that play out like digital dreams across custom-built driving worlds. And then one day, quietly, you get the internal memo. Waymo is launching a ride-hailing service. No driver, no steering wheel, no fallback human. You freeze. This is the real test. Because now it's not about demos, it's about trust. Will people actually step inside a car with no one at the wheel? Turns out, yes. Slowly, cautiously, but yes. At first, the riders are early adopters, tech enthusiasts, people who, let's be honest, just want to tell their friends, yeah, I rode in a robot car. But then the moms show up, the grandparents, the commuters. Waymo rolls out in Phoenix suburbs. The weather is predictable, the roads are wide, the variables are low, perfect for the future to learn how to walk. You remember sitting in a Waymo car for the first time? It was anticlimactic, smooth, boring, even. You checked your phone, it was like riding with a friend who never talks. That's when it clicked. This isn't about flash, it's about normal. The better the system, the less you notice it. Just like search, just like email, just like all the best tools in your life that vanish into your routine. Of course, not everyone's convinced. Regulators ask tough questions. Insurance companies sweat. Some folks still refuse to get in unless they can talk to a human. Business schools debate it endlessly. Will autonomy scale before the business model does? Is robotaxi the endgame, or just a waypoint? You sip your cold brew and shrug. You're just happy the car didn't try to high-five a mailbox this time. Waymo's fleet expands. Different cities, different terrains. Eventually, other companies enter the game. Tesla, Cruise, Zoox, even Apple, maybe. But Waymo? It's got that head start and a secret weapon, time. Years of data, petabytes of road nuance, all soaked into its code like tea in memory foam. One day, you ride to work in a Waymo and barely notice. You check emails, eat your breakfast bar, wave at the crossing guard, and you realize the future didn't arrive like a drum roll. It just slid quietly into the intersection, signaled left, and kept going. The first thing you notice walking into the Capitol Hill hearing room is the lighting. It's bright, harsh, designed less for thinking and more for TV. You're not on trial exactly, but it sure feels that way. Because this time, Google isn't being celebrated for innovation. It's being questioned, challenged, pulled into the hot seat of American democracy. You adjust your lanyard. Try not to sweat. There are cameras, reporters, congressional interns pretending not to eavesdrop while aggressively updating their LinkedIn profiles. The nameplate on the table says Google, but the real label might as well read Power. That's what everyone's here to talk about. Not page rank, not moonshots, but market dominance, data, ads, control. You watch as the CEO takes a seat and adjusts the mic. He smiles, polite, measured, exactly the right amount of khakis. Then the questions come. Why does Google have over 90% of the search market? Can small businesses compete? Is Google too big to be held accountable? You flinch when one representative asks why their granddaughter sees a certain ad. It's unclear if they understand how search works or the internet at all. Still, the tension is real. Because underneath the awkward metaphors and misused acronyms, there's a genuine concern. When one company becomes the gatekeeper of knowledge, what checks it? You think back to the early days. when Google was the underdog, when the homepage was simple, when "Don't be evil" wasn't ironic meme fodder. Now, you have vertical search, shopping, flights, reviews, news, maps, and of course, the ads. Always the ads. In meetings, people refer to them with clinical precision, click-through rates, quality scores, auction dynamics. But in this room, the language is blunter. Are you manipulating search to favor your own products? It's the kind of question that makes PR teams whisper, "Please don't improvise," into their sleeves. And the CEO, he answers calmly, "We build products that help users. We face competition. We respect regulation." But the subtext is clear. This is not the end of the conversation. Outside the room, things are heating up globally. The EU hits Google with multi-billion euro fines over shopping search, over Android, over privacy. You get emails with subject lines like "Regulatory Roundup Q3," "Antitrust Watch List, Do Not Forward," and you realize the company is being audited not just financially, but morally. The debates extend beyond governments. Academia chimes in, tech ethics panels, user rights organizations. In one memorable podcast, a former engineer says, "Google isn't a tech company anymore. It's infrastructure." You pause. That's the thesis right there. When you build a product that becomes invisible, part of the world's basic function, people start demanding more than features. They want fairness, transparency, control. And you get it, you do. But inside the company, things are messy. Not because people don't care, but because scale makes everything harder. You remember in All Hands where someone said, 10 years ago, 2 engineers could fix something over lunch. Now it takes 4 teams, legal review, and a public statement. It wasn't a complaint, just a fact. Still, there's progress. You sit in long meetings about explainable AI, bias detection, user data minimization. You build dashboards that let people see what Google knows. You give them more control. You add toggles. You write policies so long, even lawyers wince. And the tension remains. The same company that helps people find flu symptoms faster is also the one that determines which restaurants appear when they search "best noodles near me." It's power. And power, even in khakis, gets challenged. Some say Google should be broken up. Others say regulation should adapt. And a few, just a few, say maybe we shouldn't rely on private companies for public infrastructure at all. You sit with all of it. Because if you work here, if you build this stuff, if you care, you don't get to ignore these questions. You have to live with them, design for them, lose sleep over them. That's the real responsibility. Not the homepage, not the brand, but the impact. You leave the hearing room quietly. Behind you, someone's still asking a question about cookies. Outside, it's raining. Soft, steady. Just enough to remind you. The most powerful things in the world don't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes they just fall. Drop by drop. Unseen, but changing everything. You're standing in a cafeteria line, eyeing a tray of suspiciously fancy quinoa, when you hear someone behind you whisper, "Did you go to the TGF last week?" You freeze. Because at Google, TGF isn't just a Friday meeting. It's a cultural artifact, a tradition, a sometimes awkward, sometimes inspiring, often very memeable gathering of the tribe. And lately, it's changed. You remember the old TGIFs, a folding table, a handheld mic, someone demoing a broken Maps prototype while eating a bagel. Larry or Sergey casually walking in, barefoot, with a half-drunk smoothie and a brilliant but semi-incomprehensible rant about decentralized email. It was messy. It was real. It felt like a family gathering with graphs. But now, it's broadcast to offices around the globe. There are slides, pre-cleared questions, moderator scripts, and fewer bagels. You walk into this week's TGIF just in time to hear an update about a new internal initiative, One Google. The irony doesn't go unnoticed, because beneath the glossy presentation, the truth is that the culture's shifting. You feel it in the kitchens, in the hallways, in the tone of the memes on the company meme board. Yes, that's a real thing. The idealism is still there, but it's complicated now. Google's not the scrappy underdog anymore. It's a multinational corporation with over 100,000 employees, offices on 6 continents, and a policy team bigger than some governments. And with size comes questions. Inside the company, people are asking things like, are we still living up to the mission? Who gets to make the big calls now? Why is the micro kitchen out of string cheese again? Valid concerns, all of them. There are internal message boards where engineers argue, politely, passionately, about AI ethics, ad targeting, and climate commitments. There are walkouts, real ones. Thousands of Googlers stepping away from their desks to protest sexual harassment handling. You remember that day vividly. The silence of the buildings, the posters held high, the emotion in the air. Because it wasn't just about one issue. It was about voice, about trust, about whether a place built on asking questions could still handle its own employees doing the same. You sit in more meetings now that include phrases like employee engagement and organizational transparency. Some are productive, some aren't. You watch brilliant people leave, some to start nonprofits, some to write books, some to simply take a break from tech altogether. And yet, people still line up to work here. Because despite everything, the company still builds good things. Magic level things. Your phone still finishes your sentences. Maps still saves your road trip. Search still finds you a noodle shop that makes you feel less homesick. But yes, the tension is real. Between scale and soul. Between bottom line and big picture. Between moving fast and not breaking people. You hear someone at the espresso bar say, I joined to make the world better. Now I feel like I'm optimizing ad placement for mattress startups. You nod. Because same. And yet, you walk past a whiteboard where someone scribbled out a wild new idea for internet access in remote villages. You see a 20-something PM staying late to run inclusion training for her team. You hear a new hire say, this is the first place I've ever felt like my voice mattered. So maybe culture doesn't just live in the meetings or the mission statement. Maybe it's the little choices every day, like correcting a colleague's pronouns without being asked, or pushing back on a product decision that doesn't feel right, or refusing to use users like they're abstract entities instead of actual humans. Some business books say that Google's culture peaked years ago. Others argue it's just evolving, messy, unpredictable, like the internet it helped shape. You think about it on your way out the building. Past the lava lamp in the lobby, the glow's a little dimmer now, but it's still on, still flickering, still weird, still trying. And maybe that's enough. You're holding the newest Google phone in your hand. And for the first time, it doesn't feel like a side project. It feels intentional, polished, heavy in all the right ways, like it knows it belongs. Welcome to the age of the pixel. It wasn't always like this. You remember the early days of Android hardware? The G1 looked like a garage door opener with a keyboard. The Nexus line? Beloved by developers, forgotten by retail stores. You once tried to explain the Nexus 5X to your aunt. She thought it was a prescription. But now, Google isn't just making software. It's making stuff. Phones, earbuds, laptops, Cameras so good they might expose your childhood wallpaper in full 4K retro shame. The shift really began when the company formed a proper hardware division in 2016. Rick Osterloh came in from Motorola, and people started using phrases like end-to-end integration and the Apple of Android. That one made folks flinch a little, but also, you couldn't ignore it. Because the truth was, Google had the brains, the AI, the software. It just hadn't nailed the form yet. Enter Pixel. The first one had a weird chin and an even weirder exclusive on Verizon, but it also had something magical. Google Assistant, baked in, ready to whisper weather updates and dad jokes into your soul. You remember watching the launch event. There was a moment where someone held up the Pixel and said, "This is the best smartphone camera ever." And the crowd actually paused. Because it wasn't about megapixels, it was about algorithms. HDR Plus was doing things people didn't understand yet, combining multiple exposures before you even tapped the shutter. Some photographers were furious. Is this real photography? Others just nodded and posted low-light portraits that looked like they had been shot by ghosts with professional lighting rigs. You took your first astrophotography shot on a Pixel 4. It looked like space had personally dropped into your backyard, even though you were just standing near a parking lot light in San Jose. From there, Pixel evolved. Smoother hardware, tensor chips designed in-house, custom silicon, real ambition. The UI? So clean, it looked like it had been washed with organic lavender soap. But it wasn't just about the phone. It was about the ecosystem. You started noticing how well everything played together. Assistant on your phone, calendar synced with Gmail, Nest Hub glowing softly in your kitchen, showing you recipes for vegan lasagna, even though you never asked for that. It felt connected and slightly creepy, which sparked internal debate. You sat in product meetings where engineers argued about on-device processing versus cloud-based features. One side said, "We want magic." The other said, "We want privacy." Eventually, you built both. Magic that respected your space, sort of. Marketing started calling Pixel phones the helpful phone. You couldn't argue with it. The spam call screener alone felt like a bodyguard who wore a polite bow tie. You get a call from Scam Likely, Google would answer for you, read the transcript, and give you the option to respond or just walk away like a mic drop. You felt powerful. Of course, it wasn't all smooth. Pixel shipments still lagged behind Samsung and Apple. You once overheard someone in a Best Buy say, "Google makes phones?" You winced. Still, the direction was clear. Google wasn't just borrowing hardware from partners anymore. It was owning it. Design, silicon, support. Even those charmingly awkward product ads with indie folk music and couples making pancakes. And the software? It kept getting smarter. Real-time translation, live captions, adaptive battery. At one point, your Pixel told you to leave for the airport 15 minutes early because it had noticed construction on your usual route. You didn't remember asking, but you were glad it cared. Somewhere in a campus cafe, someone scribbled a quote on a napkin. The Pixel is what Android looks like when Google loves it back. You saved that napkin, because even with all the market share debates, you felt it was true. This wasn't just hardware, it was Google in physical form. A pocket-sized expression of 20 years of search, maps, machine learning, and the occasional product flop. Looking at you, Pixel Slate. But every version, every gen got better. More refined, more confident, more Google. You hold your phone, not because it's the most popular, but because it feels like yours. And somehow, this is only the beginning. You're in a windowless lab with humming refrigerators, wires like spaghetti on Red Bull, and air so cold it could refrigerate time itself. On the counter, a metal box roughly the size of a dorm room microwave. Inside, a quantum chip. It doesn't blink, it doesn't beep. It just exists. And somehow this quiet little square of physics is supposed to change the world. Welcome to Google's quantum dream. You flash back to 2013 when Google first teamed up with a Canadian company called D-Wave. Back then, quantum computing still sounded like something from a Christopher Nolan subplot. Cool in theory, impossible in practice, mostly used as an icebreaker at weird parties. But you heard whispers. There's a team. They're trying to solve optimization problems that would take classical computers centuries. You wandered down the hall, peeked into a server room, saw scientists with PhDs in physics arguing over helium tanks and quantum decoherence. It felt like walking into someone else's very expensive science fair, but they weren't messing around. By 2014, Google formed its own quantum AI team. By 2019, they dropped the headline, "Quantum Supremacy Achieved." Mic dropped. The claim, a Google quantum processor called Sycamore solved a specific math problem in 200 seconds that would take the most powerful classical supercomputer 10,000 years. You were there when the paper hit ARXIV. And then the internet. Twitter exploded. Physicists scrambled. IBM fired back with a polite but extremely detailed blog post. The scientific world wasn't quite ready to hand over the trophy. But something had changed. The conversation wasn't if anymore. It was when. You remember being in a conference call with marketing folks who asked, "So, how do we explain this to regular people?" Someone replied, "Tell them it's like building the Wright brothers plane. Even if it only flew for 12 seconds, it flew." And that's the vibe. Quantum computers are delicate creatures. They operate near absolute zero. They get annoyed by vibration, by light, by thoughts, probably. One engineer described it as trying to stack Jenga blocks while the table is vibrating and someone's yelling random prime numbers at you. Still, they kept building. Error correction became the holy grail. You sat in meetings where people debated things like logical qubits versus physical qubits. You had no idea what they were talking about. But they did. And they were so excited. Because the end goal? A universal quantum computer. One that could simulate molecules for drug discovery. Or optimize traffic patterns for entire cities. Or crack encryption so fast it makes current cybersecurity feel like a wet paper towel. No pressure. Of course, this raises a few eyebrows. Governments take notice, start building their own programs. Quantum becomes the new space race. Some say Google's ahead. Others say it's just one player in a long game. But inside the team, there's a quiet pride. You visit the quantum lab one afternoon. There's a new chip, smaller, cleaner, a little more stable. Someone says, "We ran the test, error rate dropped again." People high-five quietly like they're afraid of disturbing the atoms. You look at the machine, it's just sitting there, frozen in time, literally and figuratively. But behind that silence is pure potential, the ability to crack problems humans can't even articulate yet. Of course, it's not going to run your spreadsheet, or your weather app, or your email. Not yet. This isn't about everyday computing. This is physics meets math meets faith. And while the business world is still trying to understand what it means, you already know. This is another Google moonshot. Not loud, not glossy, but real. And maybe someday this quiet little chip, so cold it makes Pluto look tropical, will solve something that changes everything. But for now, it just sits there, waiting. Not blinking, just existing. And that's enough. You're standing in a demo room where someone just typed a sentence into a box. And the system replied with code, an image caption, and a playlist. Not a search engine, not a chatbot, not quite an assistant either. This is something new. Welcome to the age of Gemini. No, not the zodiac sign, not the NASA missions. This Gemini has a few billion parameters, no birth chart, and a very real ability to write poetry about supply chains. And it's all grown from Google's biggest, boldest AI shift yet, the era of multimodal models. Back in the early 2020s, you watched the large language model craze unfold like a wildfire with a math degree. GPT, Palm, Solacity, LaMDA. Bard. Names that sounded like startup dogs or Nordic gods. Google had always been building language tech under the hood. You saw it in search snippets, in Gmail autocomplete, in Translate, but then the models got huge and flexible and increasingly curious. They didn't just generate sentences, they inferred meaning, predicted context, asked clarifying questions like that one friend who never lets you finish a story without fact-checking. So Gemini enters the scene, not with fanfare, but with a quiet confidence. Because this thing can see, hear, read, write, and yes, even reason in ways that feel eerily smooth. You type, draw me a map of emotional states based on the characters in succession, and it gives you a chart with arrows and footnotes. You whisper, wait, that wasn't on the internet, and the model shrugs. Well, metaphorically, if it could shrug. Engineers call it multimodal alignment. Product managers call it delight. Your aunt calls it the robot that helps me with my Wordle. You call it everything at once computing, because that's what it is. Gemini is trained not just on text, but images, audio, video, code. You show it a photo of your dog and ask, is he judging me? It replies, only a little based on ear angle. You upload a spreadsheet and say, make this into a story for third graders. It gives you a rhyming tale about apples, budgets, and something called Professor Pie Chart. And all of this is powered by years of research. Google Brain, DeepMind, Palm 2, Gemini 1.5, 2, 3. Each iteration is more nuanced, faster, able to handle longer inputs, stranger queries, deeper logic. You walk into a testing room one day where someone feeds it an entire screenplay, then asks, make it 30% funnier and set in space. It does, and it's good. You start to wonder if the model should start billing for screenwriting credits. But behind the marvels are the concerns. Ethics teams are working overtime. Bias, accuracy, consent. What if it hallucinates? What if it says something harmful? What if it gets too good at imitating humans? You hear debates that echo across Slack threads and Stanford symposiums alike. Is this the new electricity or the next printing press? Is this product or power? You sit in a round table where someone says, we're not just building tools anymore, we're building thought partners. That lands like thunder. Because Gemini isn't just helping with your homework, it's shaping how we think and how we trust. There's a moment when the team tests Gemini on multimodal search. You give it a picture of a broken sink and ask, can I fix this with stuff I have at home? It looks, it thinks, it answers. Possibly. You'll need a wrench, duct tape, and patience. You laugh. Because yeah, fair. Then it follows up with a video suggestion. Then a written step-by-step. Then a warning about water shutoff valves. It's not just pulling from a database. It's building a response from multiple sources for you. That's the new game. Context-aware, multisensory, hyper-personalized knowledge delivery. And yes, this will rewrite education, customer service, search, creativity, maybe even relationships. Business experts say Gemini is the heart of Google's AI first future. Critics worry it's the first step toward a world where nothing is verified, but everything is confidently worded. And you? You sit with it, ask it questions, push its limits. You're not sure where it's all going, but you do know this. The model doesn't get tired. It doesn't forget. And it's learning faster than anything you've ever seen. So maybe the name fits. Because Gemini, the twins, holds duality. Speed and wisdom, precision and chaos, answer and echo. And somewhere in that balance, you find the future. You're staring at your laptop screen, but what you're really looking at is the future of search. And it doesn't look like 10 blue links anymore. Gone are the days when people typed full questions like, "Where can I buy good hiking boots near me?" Now it's boots, wet, cheap. Typed mid-hike, mid-rain, mid-frustration. And search still gets it. Because behind that simple bar is no longer a search engine. It's a search mind. It knows what you meant, where you are, what you might need next. This isn't just Google search circa 2025. It's search with AI, context, and a little too much confidence. You test a prototype one day where, instead of getting search results, the system just gives you the answer. A full paragraph, cited, structured, voice ready. You ask, "Why is my sourdough not rising?" It gives you 4 possible reasons, a link to a video tutorial, and a gentle encouragement like, "Hang in there, baking's a journey." It's helpful, and also a little weird, because the model knows what you need before you do. You once typed, "I'm thinking of taking a break," and the results included yoga retreats, local therapists, and an article called "Burnout: Signs You Missed." You didn't click, but you read every word. This is where search is going: proactive, predictive, personal. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people don't notice until they do. The AI that once simply ranked websites is now summarizing the web itself, and that means things get complicated. You hear murmurs from publishers. Where's the traffic? Are people even clicking anymore? Is Google just answering for us? And it's a fair question, because search has become a conversation, not a map, not a list, a response. And when Gemini, or Bard, or whatever it's called this quarter, sits inside that search bar, it's not pulling data, it's co-creating answers. The business team calls this search generative experience. The engineers call it SGE. You call it, "Oh wow, it actually rewrote that sentence for me in the tone of Oprah." It's impressive. But also, like most powerful things, it reshapes the landscape beneath it. Ads don't just sit on the top anymore. They blend in, they interact. Sometimes they answer questions before you even scroll. Regulators are paying attention. Is this fair competition? Are we confusing users? Is this still search, or is it just Google talking to itself? You're in one product ethics meeting where someone says, "If the AI answers everything, do we still need the web?" The room goes quiet. No one wants to admit how close we are to that crossroads. Meanwhile, people keep using it. Millions. Because honestly, it's easier, it's fast, it's gentle. It feels like Google grew a soul and decided to speak softly. You think back to the earliest versions of PageRank, the wild chaos of keyword stuffing and link farms, the arms race of SEO, and the dream of being on page 1. Now, there is no page 1. There's just the answer. Curated, generated, served on a glowing platter. Somewhere in a business school, students argue about this shift. Is Google collapsing its own ecosystem by summarizing it? Or is this the inevitable evolution of user experience? You tune out the jargon, because here's what you know: the world no longer wants information, it wants understanding. It doesn't want links, it wants meaning. And now Google's job is to deliver that meaning with empathy. You scroll through an SGE demo and find a user asking, "Why do I feel stuck in my career?" The AI doesn't just return self-help articles, it gives a list of journaling prompts, job pivot options, and then says, sometimes the first step is just acknowledging the feeling. You're doing great already. You close your laptop, exhale. It's not the search you started building, but maybe it's the one the world needs now. It's raining again. Not the poetic kind, not the soft cinematic drizzle that makes everything feel nostalgic. No, this is the glitchy kind. The kind that fogs up windows and triggers 3 separate home assistants to say, "I didn't quite catch that," in chorus. You sit in your kitchen, sipping lukewarm tea while your Pixel buzzes with a calendar reminder titled Google AI Governance Sync Rain Plan. You smile, because yeah, this part, we didn't see coming either. You're deep in the weeds now, not with code or ads or even clever UX animations. You're in the thick of philosophy meets policy. The era of move fast and break things is over. Now it's move fast, but also check with legal, ethics, the EU, PR, 5 working groups, and the open web community. And honestly, that's good. Because the tools you helped build, they're no longer just tools. They're becoming systems of trust. Search used to point to information. Now it synthesizes it. Assistant used to tell you the weather. Now it detects if you sound sad and asks if you want to hear music. Chrome used to be a browser. Now it predicts which site you're going to open next and starts loading it before you even type. That's power. And power attracts questions, big ones. You scroll through an internal doc titled AI and Societal Impact, What We Owe the Future. It's 63 pages, and you read every word. Bias, surveillance, digital colonialism, consent fatigue. These aren't product features, they're consequences, and you're not the only one losing sleep over them. Inside Google, the conversations have changed. Ethics reviews are no longer a checkbox. They're battlegrounds, with researchers, PMs, designers, and lawyers all in the room. You've been in one where someone said, "If we can't explain how it works, we shouldn't ship it." And another where someone replied, "If we wait until we fully understand it, we'll never ship anything again." Tension. Everywhere. But from that tension, you've seen growth. AI principles, red teams, fairness toolkits. Not perfect, not complete, but honest, intentional, human. And outside, the world is catching up. Governments are drafting AI regulation faster than you can say multimodal hallucination. Academics are asking if search itself should be a public utility. And TikTok? Well, it's trying to become a search engine too. Cool, great, totally fine. You sip your tea and open the latest trust dashboard. You see metrics you never had before: confidence score, answer source exposure, user comprehension likelihood. This isn't about clicks anymore. It's about clarity. And what's wild is users can feel the difference. You watch as search now explains itself. This result is generated based on recent data from academic sources. This ad is shown because of your past queries about outdoor gear. Transparency. Not just because it's the right thing, but because trust is the product now. That's the real shift. In the beginning, Google's mission was about organizing information. But now, it's about navigating a world where truth is fuzzy, Language is political, and everything is searchable, but not always knowable. And what do you do with that? You keep building carefully, with checks, with balance, with people in the room whose job is to say, maybe not yet, maybe not like this, maybe not at all. Because Google isn't just answering the world's questions anymore, it's deciding which questions get asked. And that's not code, that's character. You sit back. Outside, the rain has lightened. Your Google Home whispers, there's a break in the weather. Might be a good time for a walk. You nod. Because even now, even after all the growing pains, the hearings, the model debates, the whispered fears that maybe the magic had faded, Google still feels like home. A complicated, evolving, occasionally frustrating home. But one where people still ask big questions, still listen, still care. And honestly, that might be the best product of all. You wake up. Not to an alarm, but to your Nest Hub softly brightening the room with a sunrise that's artificial, but oddly convincing. The weather's already been checked. The coffee machine is warming up. There's a quiet ping. Your commute is 17 minutes shorter today. And as you stretch, you realize you've fully stepped into a world Google quietly helped shape. This isn't just a tech company anymore. It's a layer of your day. You check your Pixel. Gmail has sorted your inbox. Calendar rescheduled your 1:30 meeting because it noticed your flight was delayed. Photos shows you a memory from 5 years ago. Your dog, wearing socks, inexplicably judging you. You don't even remember uploading it, but Google remembers. It remembers everything. And in some strange, seamless way, that remembering has become comforting. A kind of digital scaffolding for your messy, busy, constantly refreshing life. At work, you use docs with real-time suggestions from AI that sounds like your favorite English teacher. In Meet, the captions are instant. In Drive, everything's searchable. Even the scanned receipt from that ramen place in Tokyo you swore you'd never forget, but totally forgot. And as you walk to the cafe for your afternoon cortado, you whisper into your earbuds, "What's that indie song from the show with the time loop and the raccoon?" You hear the answer a beat later. Correct. Down to the track. This is life now, frictionless, curated. Gentle, if a little eerie. But here's what you know. It wasn't always this way. You were there when two kids in a garage said, "What if people could find things better?" And now, they do. Better, faster, smarter. Sometimes too smart. You still think about that. About how every helpful feature has a shadow. How every great algorithm must be watched like a toddler with finger paint and a credit card. You know that trust is fragile, and that the moment Google forgets it's about the user, not the data, that trust slips. But you also know this. Every day, teams still gather to ask the hard questions, to argue over privacy toggles, to delay launches because the model needs more tuning, to stop and say, "This isn't good enough yet." And that's the real legacy. Not just the code, but the conscience, the willingness to admit that progress isn't linear, that sometimes you need to reboot, rethink, apologize, or just sit in a room and listen. Because if Google stands for anything now, it's that the world is too complex to navigate alone. And that's what search was always about. Not answers, not ads, but connection. Between ideas, between people, between you and the wider world. You take a deep breath. The street is quiet. A notification buzzes softly on your wrist. Not urgent, just available. And you whisper, "Hey Google, tell me something good." And it does. Not because it knows everything, but because it remembers what it's for. And so do you. Now the lights have dimmed, the rain is soft again, and your breath has slowed just enough to hear the faint rhythm of the world spinning under you. You're not thinking about search engines anymore, or IPOs, or moonshots. You're thinking about a garage, quiet, cluttered, buzzing with the hum of dreaming machines. You're thinking about a little white box that asked you to type something. Anything. And you did. And from that tiny act came a company, a tool, a world. A world made searchable, sortable, strangely kind, even in its algorithmic bluntness. You're not in a boardroom now, not in a data center, not on a self-driving test track. You're just here, still, breathing, curious. And that's what this story was always about. Not just about Google, but about you, your questions, your clicks, your wondering. So close your eyes. Let the background hum drift you away, like a late night search that leads to a Wikipedia page you never meant to read, but couldn't stop scrolling. You're part of the code now, part of the story, part of the dream. Sleep well, rest easy, and remember, you've already found your answer.